Introducing MyTrucking, where innovation meets logistics and a software solution to drive your success. No contracts, no setup costs, and world-class support. MyTrucking, your success is our destination.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining our first ever webinar for the MyTrucking system. Today we're going to focus on the MyTrucking and the Xero integration. Just before we get into it though, we'll just start with a bit of housekeeping. So during the webinar you'll see a couple of polls pop up, so just asking some questions just so we can get some information around various systems and features that we've got, and also the user base that of people that are using it. So those are the polls. There'll also be a space down the bottom to ask any questions. So we'll run through questions if they pop up at the time when they're relevant, or we'll jump in and we'll answer them at the end. So just to introduce myself, my name's Matt. I'm in the sales and support team here, and I'm joined by Crystal as well. Say hey, Crystal.
Hey.
So Crystal's going to be helping me out, just managing the question flows, and she'll butt in with anything that we need to go through. So that is sort of the housekeeping side over. So we'll jump into the demo. So as I said, today's one's going to be focusing on the MyTrucking and the Xero integration. So MyTrucking is obviously, it's a job management system, and it's really good for just being simple and creating jobs all the way through to invoicing. And the big part of the invoicing is the Xero system. Now, the vast majority of our users, around 70%, use Xero, so it's a really handy one to have. So when we were deciding what webinar we should do first, we decided it'd probably be a really good one to cover off, because it is a staple integration for us. And there's also a few things we've added recently that you may or may not be aware of. So bit of an overview for today. We'll start on the settings page, just so you can see all the different types of settings that we have and the different things you can turn on as features for the Xero integration. And then we'll go through and send a job over to Xero, show you what that looks like, and then show you what that looks like once it comes back into MyTrucking as well. So to reward you all for joining our first ever webinar, we've got our Refer a Mate feature, and we've actually doubled the bonus as well. So if you've got any mates after watching this demo and you think, I reckon they'd be pretty good on MyTrucking, fire through a webinar Refer a Mate, and if they do sign up, then you'll get a $200 gift card. Can't do cold hard cash because of the tax man, but we can do a Prezi card, so basically as good as cash. So before we jump into the demo, just would really like to start with a poll just to know where all our current attendees are sitting in terms of their Xero lifeline. So if you could just fill the poll in, it's just a couple of answers, whether you're currently a Xero user or you're looking to make the switch. So we'll just give people a couple of seconds to fill that vote in. Crystal will let me know when we've got a good amount of people there. The reason we asked for this one is just so we know, do we want to start at the very start and explain what Xero and MyTrucking do together? Or if we've got pretty much everyone using Xero, then we'll jump straight into the settings and we can show you all the cool features that we can enable.
Cool. Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Awesome. What was the results, Crystal?
I'm just trying to pull them up, Matt. I'll have to let you know a bit later.
Okay, cool, not a worries. All right, we'll jump in now and we'll go to the Xero connection wizard. So at the very start, when you link your MyTrucking and your Xero system, what you'll do is you'll go through a bit of a connection wizard. And that's basically just to, at the very start, obviously, if you've got your Xero account, you've probably got your clients in there. You've probably got some GL codes and some tracking categories. If you don't know what they are, we'll go through them shortly. But by connecting through a wizard, it allows us to pull through all your client lists and all the other relevant information. So when you first enter into your MyTrucking account, this may have been something you did recently, might have been something you did a while ago, but it means all your clients are there for you. So there's no need to manually set up your clients one by one, and can really speed up that onboarding process for you. So what we'll do is I'll just close off the presentation now and we'll jump into the actual MyTrucking screen. Can you see my screen all right, Crystal?
Yep, sure can.
Perfect. So we're just in my demo account here at the moment. So I'm on the settings page. So we'll go down to the relevant invoice settings. So the first off, we've got our sort of overarching invoicing settings. Now, these ones aren't Xero specific, but they're probably a good thing to touch on anyway. Might have been a while since you've looked, and there's a few new things in here as well. So The main one is our invoice due period. So when that job gets posted over to Xero and sent out to the customer, how long do you have your payment terms for? So there's a couple of options. I've got mine set to 7 days, but I can go 2 weeks, 20th of the following, end of the month. If it's one where, say, you're doing maybe some pickups and you want payment on delivery, then you can set that as well. Then you can have, obviously we've got our due period, but that starts from a certain date. So what date do we want that to be? We can make it either the date the job was done, the last day of the month, or today. Now what today means is today as in the day that I sent that job over to Xero. So those are a handy couple of options there. Now let's jump into the Xero specific options. So this is where we can start fleshing out all the things that you can have turned on or turned off in order to customize your integration and make it work the best for you. So just a bit of housekeeping on the integration. It is a time-based one. So if it's been a while since you've posted over to Xero, and when you go to send your first job over, you get a bit of an error message or anything, first port of call is just to come and click the Authorize with Xero button. That'll basically just reconnect up the two systems, and all going well, this is what you should see. 3 green messages saying that we've got your preferences, we've got your GL codes, and we've got your tracking categories as well. So then what we can look at is just a few of the sales tax options. Now, we do have the inclusive and exclusive. I recommend keeping it tax exclusive so that the amounts you put into your MyTrucking are your pure revenue. There's no GST on top of that figure, which can make it a bit tricky when you're doing your reporting in MyTrucking. The good thing about keeping it exclusive as well is that once it gets over to Xero, Xero will handle all of that for you. If you did want to do the inclusive amount though, you can come through and add your label to that there, whether it's GST or value-added tax, depending on where you are located in the world, and then you can put in the percentage for that as well. Now going through to our GL codes, you've probably heard me mention them a bit. And for those of you who are unaware of what they are the general ledger codes. So what it means is, in terms of the MyTrucking system, if you've got, say, different types of products and they're going to different revenue sections, you want to be able to split those out. So by enabling the GL codes on the product page, it means you can go through and assign your different products through to your different GL codes. So for example, I've got my bulk storage product that I have here. I want to assign that through to maybe my bulk freight revenue, or I've even got one here direct for my bulk storage. And then for another product here, I've got my pallets. So I can come through and assign that. That'll probably go to my general freight revenue. So then all we need to do is hit save on that. And the next time that we post a job for one of these two products over to Xero, it'll recognize the GL code and apportion the revenue out to that code. So that can be a really handy way for you to do, your splitting, especially in, a couple of transport businesses where you've got different divisions doing different things and you want to keep an eye on just the revenue from each division. That's a really easy way to do that. So then we'll come back down and have a look. So as I showed you, you can set specific GL codes for products, but we do have a default one as well. So if there's any that just want to go into the pool, or it's a new product and you haven't got a GL code for it yet, what it will do is it'll assign this GL code whenever you're posting over. So you can set that one. I've just got ours set to our default sales account. And then in a similar vein, so we've kind of gone through how to apportion revenues via product, but Xero also has this really handy feature called tracking codes. And what that allows you to do is start apportioning your revenue rather than on your products, on your assets. So there are 2 categories. I've got mine set as my cost center and my trucks. So I'll show you on the vehicles page how I've got that set and why I've set them like that. So for example, I've got my vehicle here, vehicle 102. If I want to go through and say that that vehicle works out of the Masterton yard and it is also in my tracking categories as 102, what that means is whenever that vehicle does a job and that job gets posted over to Xero, it'll apportion the revenue not only to my Masterton branch, but also to that vehicle specifically. So when you're thinking in terms of what are the things you can do in Xero, that means if you've got your revenue assigning to your truck, you can go through and assign your cost to it, and you can easily, automate a profit and loss statement, which is a really handy one to have. If, say, you come through and you go into Xero and say, looking at it after this, you go, actually, I want to change my tracking categories. If you do change them, all you've got to do is come in here and click Update Tracking Categories. And from there, it'll pull through your latest lists. So I'll just go through, forgot to save those ones. So Masterton and 102. Hit save, and then for any jobs now, those will assign to those 2 tracking categories. So we're making our way through most of the settings now, but a really handy one that we've recently added, so people may or may not know about it, but I think it's probably one of the favorites for myself in terms of the Xero integration, is the ability now to include your attachments on an invoice. So say you're doing work and one of your customers, along with the invoice, they want a copy of all the POD signatures or any consignment notes. Ticking this box here will enable all of those attachments for the jobs to be packaged up with the job and posted over to Xero and included as an attachment. So that's a really handy one. So if that's something you haven't got currently, come in here and give that a tick and hit save. Give it a test for a couple of jobs and see what you think. So then,
Matt, just don't have any questions in just yet, but just so you all know, 100% of our people today are Xero users.
Oh, awesome. Cool. That's really good to hear. I mean, that sort of matches what I was thinking. I mean, I can give a bit of a stat away to say that out of all of our MyTrucking users, around 70% are Xero. So it's a very big pull, and it's definitely probably the ones we recommend. And that's quite a good segue, actually, because this feature I'm going to talk about here, our levies, this is a Xero-only feature that we can do. So we can't do it with any other systems. And one of the main reasons why, when everyone asks, hey, Matt, what accounting system do you recommend for people who are coming in and they're, just starting on their journey to digital, I always recommend Xero, and this is one of the big factors why. So what levies enables us to do is specifically for the transport space, a space for us to do our fuel adjustment factor. So what that means is we can add a percentage to the revenue of our job and include that as a subtotal towards the invoice for the fuel adjustment factor. Now, we've all seen all over the place fuel going up and down every other week, so we don't want to be constantly updating our rate cards for the customers, but we want to make sure that the fluctuation in price is covered for our expenses. So the fuel added factor allows us to do that quite nicely. At the moment, it is only 1% per your customer base, but one thing I'm quite interested to know, and we're going to run a poll on, is how many of you would find value if we did a fuel adjustment factor per customer or per product. Just that way we know different contracts have different assigned amounts. So it would be a really handy one to know if you think it would be interesting for us to do. So hopefully that has popped up for you and you can submit a vote. And then Crystal will let us know when that one's come through and we can talk about how we could get that one into the system for you.
Cool. Hey, we've got some pretty big results in already, Matt, and we're looking at about 75% of users who would love to be able to have FAF at a per client level.
Oh, awesome. That's really good to know. And the reason I ask for it is MyTrucking is a cloud-based system. So the changes we make are changes that get made across everyone's account. So we want to make sure when we're putting things over to the development team that it's got buy-in from a lot of our customers. So it's definitely one I thought would have a lot of interest, but it's good to have those stats as well. So what I can do now is after the webinar, I'll go have a chat to the guys and say, hey, really good response from that webinar. Everyone really wants to see, I'll fudge it a little bit, I'll say everyone, really wants to see the fuel adjustment factor at a per client or per product level, and then they can start working towards how they can get that into the system. The other thing as well is if you're sitting here watching this webinar and you're thinking, there's really something else that I think's missing here that I think would be beneficial for myself and others, what I'd suggest is over the top here when you're in your MyTrucking account, just click on the chat box and head to the message section. Flick us through a message and say, hey, was just watching the webinar. I think a really handy thing would be XYZ. And as you can see, the team's pretty quick here. So myself, Crystal, and also Donna, who's in the background running this webinar for us, we'll be able to answer those questions and put through those requests as well. So definitely fire them through. The best feature ideas always come from the customer directly. So we're keen to get as many of those as possible.
Just while we're on the levies there, Matt, we've just had a question come in. Is it easy enough to change the FAF percentage?
Yes, definitely. So at the moment, I've got mine set to 10%, but say for whatever reason, I'm going to do a set of jobs where it's at 15%. All I've got to do is change my percentage and hit save. and then that's all updated for me. That's probably quite a good question. Everyone has their own way of working out FAF. A few people have asked me, and it's at the point where I think the customers, they really know their market the best. The fuel prices even regionally in New Zealand change so much, and even much more so over in Oz, where they tend to get a better deal than us, so they're pretty lucky. What I would say though is, if you're looking for sort of a starting point, because it is a bit of a formula, the NZ Bulk Lines page has their FAF formula. Now the figures exactly might not be right for your business, but at least you can pull that formula, start entering some of your specific info, and that should be a good start towards where you want to be. But I would say, especially at the moment, I know it's retail rates, but I think I filled my ute up last month and it was $2.20, and then this month it was $1.68. So monthly feels like a good time to be just checking those. Even if it results in the same number, still gives you confidence that you know that your rates are in track with the fuel pricing. Cool. So that is all for the settings page. So let's have a look at actually what it looks like once we've got these settings turned on. So I'll head over to my day sheet now, and I have a job I prepared earlier. Feel like a professional chef here. We can come in and we'll have a look at that job, and we can see it's just a job for moving some containers from a port. We've got all the POD information from our drivers, which is really handy, and we've got our rate and total. So we'll give that job a done tick and hit save. People ask, when's the best time to give a job a done tick? I'd say as soon as that job comes in, you want to give it a done tick. And the reason for that is it'll keep your day sheet clear, and you'll just have your active and in process and future plan jobs. Now, marking it as done doesn't send it over to Xero straight away. It moves it to our invoicing page, which I kind of refer to as a holding pen. So the good thing about it is you might be working for a customer and you're doing, say, 4 or 5 loads a week, or even 4 or 5 loads a day, and the customer doesn't want an invoice for each one of those loads. They say, hey, at the end of the week, send me an invoice, or at the end of the month, send me one invoice, and just collate them all. So that's really what the invoicing page is designed to do. So we've got 2 versions of the invoicing page. We've got breaking it down by the charge client and also breaking it down by the date. People ask me, why do you have the 2 there, Matt? And it comes down to what we've found the best practice to be, and it actually isn't one that I've been following, but nevertheless, at the end of the day, when you mark the jobs as done, whoever in the business is, getting ready to put those over as invoices can come in here and just do a bit of a sanity check to make sure that the product's looking right, the invoice description is looking right, so I can click in here and have a view, and then also that the rates are right. So then I can give that a tick as done and give it an invoice to save. What that'll allow me to do now is, if I move over to the invoicing by charge page, so if you think about it, every day we're coming into the invoicing by date and we're sanity checking those jobs. It means when it comes to the end of the month or the end of the week, when I'm getting ready to post those jobs, it means I can come over to my invoicing by charge client, go into my demo account, and I can see here for that job I did for my demo customer, it's got that tick saved for me. So I know that this job's been checked off and everything looks right. Whereas if I come in here and I see these jobs I haven't ticked off, it means more sanity checking at the end of the month. And we know everyone at the end of the month has, an hour less than they need. So by doing that work during the month really saves you a lot of time at the end. The one thing I will touch on here, because now I can see it fully, is the invoice description. So I've just got my basic standard one set here, but the good thing to know is if the invoice description doesn't look quite right, or say you want a couple of different ones, we can actually in the background build invoice descriptions to suit whatever you need. So once again, if you come out of this demo and go, I'd really like to change up my invoice description to fit XYZ, just jump into the chat box and fire through a message to us and say, hey, for this product, I'd really like my invoice description to read like this. And then we can see what we can do to get it to fit that way. Also, if you're a new MyTrucking customer and you never really got around to setting up your invoice descriptions, if you've got some older descriptions in your Xero system that you want us to mimic, fire those through as well, and we should have a pretty good chance of being able to do that. So what we'll do now is we've got this one job here. We're ready to post that off. So we'll give it the blue post button. What that'll do is it'll package up that job for us, fire it over off the internet highway, and if we're lucky, it'll end up in our Xero system. So we can see success. We've posted one invoice over to Xero. So it's quite a timely time to jump over into our Xero system and see where that invoice ended up. So you're probably all pretty familiar with the Xero system. You probably know it better than I do, so I'll just stick to the bits I do know. And that is when a job is posted over to MyTrucking, posted over from MyTrucking to Xero, it shows up in the invoices owed to you section, and it shows up in the draft. So that's a really handy place for it to show up, because what it means is if there's any, say, last minute changes we needed to make, being a draft, we can still come in here and we can actually make those changes. So whether it was an invoice description, just one off, we wanted to add something, we can easily come in here and type that out for ourselves, and that'll save. And then that section we were talking about earlier about our fuel surcharge, we can see one of the questions was, hey, how often can I update that? And we changed it from a 10 to a 15. So that's equal here, nice and easy. I've kept it a round figure to show the maths, but 15% of 1,000 is 150. And then going on to that bit we talked about at the very start around leaving it exclusive. If we leave it exclusive, that means that Xero will do the GST for us and add it as a subline. So the other thing we can show, which was one I talked about, so it's all sort of coming together now, is the attachments. So we can see here that I've got my attachments. The way it's worked is it's put them all on a bit of a report, and it's added hyperlinks. So that if I click on one of those links, there we go, we can see my signature. And then, oops, sorry, that closed my Xero. I didn't expect it to do that. Should have clicked back, not close. But that's all right. So you can see that it shows you those attachments you've got included. So really handy one to turn on if that's something you're looking for. But pretty much here now, all we need to do is hit the submit for approval button, and we'll approve it, and that'll fire its way through. Now, the other good thing to know is once the job's sent over to Xero, Xero actually comes back to us and says, hey, that job you've just sent us, here's an invoice number for it. So if we head over to our Find Jobs page, where we can see all of our current and previous jobs, I can see nice and handy here, I've got that invoice number. So that's really handy for, say, the dispatch team. If a customer ever calls up and they're querying an invoice, they may not have the invoice number handy, but they might be able to say, hey, it's Matt from the demo customer. That job you did for me on the 17th, just got a question around the invoice. Means rather than having to jump into Xero and try find it, I can just easily have a search in my search box and click on the invoice number. And that'll take me straight over to Xero, and I can open that invoice up directly. So that is pretty much the MyTrucking and Xero integration in a nutshell. So we'll have time for a couple of questions. I'm sure there's a few to fire through. But the one thing I did want to run through is just a bit of a plug from the marketing team. They've asked me to go through it all. So let me just present this one here. We're nearly there. There we go. So MyTrucking, as we spoke about, always updating, and one of the things we released a little bit ago, but still is a good thing to keep reminder, is the new MyTrucking app. So the app was sort of built out of a bit of necessity. We were looking at our old Orange app that people refer to, and it was just a little dated in terms of the technology. So we decided that in order to add something new to it, it was just going to be easier for us to rebuild that app in newer technologies and also allow us to add new features much quicker. So the Blue app has been out for a while, and it's something we're really pushing people to move towards. It's got all the like-for-like features and a few extras as well. For example, the one on the display, that return job feature. So, you know, if you're out at the end of the day and there's a job you've put through, but you forgot the docket number, you can now jump into the return tab and add through any of that information and repost it. There'll also be some pretty cool stuff coming soon in the space. If you've got multiple logins for different companies, there'll be a way to sort that out, but I won't give too much away just yet. So keep your eyes out for that. And the reason I've sort of brought up the need to upgrade is because in the very near future, we will be sunsetting the Orange app. So in order to save the hassle the morning of when that one stops working, just have a chat to your drivers afterwards. Just open their phone, make sure they've got the Blue app, which is a blue icon instead of the orange, and they'll be good to go. But from there, I'll pass over to Crystal and see if we've got any questions we want to run through.
Awesome, we do. So before I jump into that, just wanting to highlight, if you haven't seen it, in the bottom right-hand corner, I believe, is where you can find where you can add a question. As well as that, there is the option to find the links, and that is where you can find a bunch of handy links from us relating to what we've been chatting about today. So awesome. Just, yeah, on from that, one question we have, Matt, when I post my jobs, can I have them on separate invoices rather than all on one?
Oh, good question. Yeah, there's a couple of ways you can do that. There's a way that's kind of automates it, and there's also a way you can do it manually. So if we head over to our invoicing by charge client page, you can see I've got a couple of jobs here. Excuse the rates, but if I wanted these all to be on separate invoices, I can go through and post them one at a time. Now that's okay for 1 or 2 invoices, but if you're doing jobs every day, that really is going to be a bit manual intensive. So what you can do is if you come into the general settings page and you come into your display options, I think it is. Yep. And if you add the order reference number, what it means you can do is if I come in, let's open up a couple of those jobs again. So if I say click into this job here and this one here, I'm going to add in, say, my order number of 001. We'll save that. And then this one here, you can see that's a separate order number. So if we go through and we'll add, just for easy purposes, 002. Now you can put anything in there. It is a text or a number field. So whether you put the date or if, say, a customer actually has given you an order number, then that's a really handy one as well. But what I can do is I can tick both of these at the same time and hit my post button, and it'll recognize that, why is that not posted? It will recognize that those are 2 separate jobs because they're broken down by the order number, and it'll actually post 2 separate invoices. So hopefully that helps you out.
Cool. I have another question that's come in, much the same, just as you were discussing it. So has anybody else got any other questions they want to throw through for us?
Doesn't have to be Xero specific. I mean, you've got the time with us now, so if there's anything else that's burning in your head and you want to run through, I've got the screen open, so happy to jump into anything else.
Cool.
Uh,
If there are any other questions and you didn't manage to get them through today or wasn't the right time, please do just jump into chat in MyTrucking. We're all happy to help you to get the most out of the system. So just fire away with any questions.
Yeah, and I think a good thing to note as well is, I mean, we all appreciate you guys attending, but hey, if there was someone in the office who was really hoping to have a watch, but got called out, truck's broken down, we all know how it goes. We are going to send a recording afterwards. So when you have a look at that recording, if any questions pop up, please just log into MyTrucking and say, hey, was just watching the recording. Can I ask a bit more about that? And either myself, Crystal, Donna, Nicole, who we actually stole from Xero, so she's a pretty handy person to have, can answer those questions for you. But I think we'll, if we're all out of questions, we'll probably...
we do actually have a couple that have just come through. Matt, does MyTrucking override Xero contacts?
Good question. Yeah, so when we first set up MyTrucking and the Xero integration, we go through that wizard, we pull through all the relevant information, and then afterwards MyTrucking becomes the source of truth. So any updates you need to make, whether say a customer changes location or changes phone number, make the changes in MyTrucking first, and then the next time you post an invoice, that will update the client file for you. So definitely, yeah, treat MyTrucking as your source of truth.
Cool. And another one here. Oh, no, I think we'll get back to that one soon. I think that's pretty much us, Matt.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll close it off here. I really appreciate you guys showing up. And for any of you Aussies over there who are working in the grain harvest, there is another webinar hosted by Nicola, our Oz BDM manager. I'm sure you all have had interactions with her. She's a character. But she's going to be hosting a webinar based on the top tips to make the most from MyTrucking for the grain harvest. So definitely jump into that and hopefully learn a few things. And if there's any grain harvest features you think would be good, that's the place to bring them up. But yeah, once again, thanks all for joining, and we'll talk to you all again soon.